Hey everyone, and welcome back to Satisfactory News. In my previous lore video, I talked about FICSIT, the Pioneer, and what Project Assembly really is. If you missed that video, I recommend watching it before this one. I'll have a link in the description, and a card should pop up with a link right now. I also want to give a warning that obviously this video has major spoilers for the story in Satisfactory. I'll be talking about content at all stages of the game, including the very end. As I mentioned in my last video, I also want to shout out Sen's Storyforge for being one of the only other people to make a lore video, and whose work translating the alien speech helped me a lot in making this video, even if we didn't come to all the same conclusions. Okay, let's get into the lore. Wait. Hold on, I'm getting a strange transmission. Playing it now.
When I landed on this planet, the mission was simple. Explore, exploit, and automate, all to save the puppies and kittens back home, or so I was told. I don't really remember anything from before I landed. Ada said that was normal. But this planet is so odd. Arching stone ribs with hexagonal skeletons, rock-shaped like massive creatures frozen in time, and now those strange spheres. They don't make any sense. They speak to me in my head. I thought I was going crazy, that I wasn't cut out to work for FICSIT. I still don't know if it was the right choice to pick them up. Ever since I did, Ada's been acting strange. Well, more strange than usual, I should say. Honestly, this is all beyond my pay grade. I guess I should just focus on the job. The fate of humanity rests on my shoulders after all.
Why this planet? I want to start out this video by mentioning Mercer Spheres, since they are the reason you're on this planet in the first place. But I'll go into more detail about them later, because there's some additional groundwork I need to lay out first. So Mercer Spheres are floating balls that behave like a solid while appearing liquid, and have no detectable mass. They were first discovered by astrobiologist Dr. D.M. Mercer, which, yes, if you didn't catch it, is a reference to famous Dungeons & Dragons dungeon master Matthew Mercer, who is even thanked in the game's credits. Massage 2ABB was actually spotted by Marie Somerville, the namesake for Somersloops, during a planet spotting event. When you first discover Mercer Spheres, Ada asks you to research one to determine its locally appropriate classification and application. Even though she mentions Dr. Mercer having a theory about what the spheres are for, she doesn't bother sharing it with you. Again, I'll explore their purpose more in a few minutes, but for now, just know that their existence and their signal they put out is what drew FICSIT to this planet to begin with, but that they may not be unique to Massage. SAM Ore. The first alien item I want to talk about in detail is SAM, which stands for Strange Alien Matter, as it is the core of all of this alien stuff. It doesn't seem to follow the known laws of physics, and it whispers of new possibilities. That's probably fine, right? The nodes speak to you in your head, and the things they say are disturbing and cryptic. You can harvest this ore just like any other material, and then turn it into reanimated SAM, which implies that it was dead and has been given some kind of artificial life in your manufacturing process. Not creepy at all. The description of the item is that it's active and electromagnetically contained, which is important because it can manipulate the atomic bonds of any matter it comes in contact with. This is really powerful stuff, which is probably why you use it in the converter to literally transform one material into another. It fundamentally changes the atomic bonds and forms new elements. You can also turn reanimated SAM into SAM fluctuators, which regulate its behavior. This regulation allows for its use in matter-to-energy conversion and spatio-temporal matter manipulation. In layman's terms, it's used in portals for instant transportation, and in a device also made possible by another alien artifact. Somersloops. Somersloops are alien objects with a mind-bending and familiar shape that emit an unsettling energy, and much like the SAM nodes, these artifacts speak to you, but they speak much more clearly. I'll talk about these communications more in detail later when I translate the alien language, but the first and obvious ones that you hear upon approaching the Somersloops are things like harvest and consume. Whatever these are, they want you to harvest them. And upon further research, you actually find a couple practical uses for them. First, production amplification, which allows you to multiply the production of a machine while using the same input materials. The other combines the Somersloop with the SAM fluctuators to create an alien power augmenter. With these two parts combined, the augmenter blasts a Somersloop with energy and is able to extract power from it. Both seem to break the laws of physics pretty severely, and the only way this doesn't break the laws of conservation of both energy and matter is if the Somersloops are incredibly power-dense batteries. And in fact, when you research them, Somersloops are described as somewhere between battery and conduit, harvesting energy from pockets of space and distributing it. It's related to the hypothetical force of dark energy. The more power you give it, the more power it produces, because it's able to expand its range from which it can pull energy. Hence why it amplifies your power grid by a certain percentage. When you find them in the world, they're usually in relatively innocuous locations, but there are a few suspicious places that point to it being a battery. Like this one, which sees the Somersloop suspended between two prongs, almost like it's a battery touching two contact points. Perhaps the planet once used these as a power source but is no longer able to, or there's no one around to use the energy. Mercer Spheres. Much like the Somersloops and SAM, Mercer Spheres are a method of communication that the aliens use to talk to the Pioneer. It appears that Mercer Spheres are not unique to this planet, as ADA asks you to research them in order to establish a locally appropriate classification and application. That application, on Massage anyways, combines the spheres with the SAM to create the dimensional depot. In this process, SAM deconstructs matter down to its base chemicals in one dimension and stores them in another, making the item accessible later. In response to developing this technology, the aliens push you to go even further, and the message is clear. Don't just send materials into a new dimension, send yourself there. They see the dimensional uploader as a shallow attempt to use their gifts. Also, for what it's worth, the dimensional depot upgrades use prime numbers to get to each next level, which potentially implies that the aliens see prime numbers as perfect. Alternatively, if the existence of Mercer Spheres has no actual relation to the aliens, it's just something they use, it might just imply that these spheres are important to the fundamental forces of the universe. And this would make sense to me too, considering what they do. The aliens' poetic speech. The alien voices that talk to you and to Ada speak in cryptic poetry. Words like shrine, resonant song, blood, and effigies show up frequently. Sometimes it seems like multiple similar words are used, and it's confusing whether they're synonyms or just totally different words, such as altar and shrine. The alien voice speaks as if it's a higher being, potentially a fourth-dimensional being that has the ability to teleport and witness the past, present, and future simultaneously. And this becomes pretty obvious once you start translating their speech, which I have done to the best of my ability using context clues in the game. Going through every single one of these would take some time, but I'll talk about a few of the major ones. It's a fascinating topic, but I don't want this video to be hours long. So one of my favorite exchanges in the entire game is Strange Communication number 13, which uses and practically defines many of the key terms. So before I define some stuff, let's take a look at this one. Witness the deep and sing for us. Asks Ada to experience the higher dimension and initiate communication with the aliens. When she asks how she's supposed to do that, the entity says, "We composed a resonant song to curve the effigy, tapping into the inner currents." Meaning they created a good communication that tunes the Pioneer's brain to whatever frequency is required to pick up their signal. We sacrificed our blood and our temples and let the metal in from the void to eat our flesh. This line is very clear to me that the beings were once physical and gave up their bodies in order to ascend. In addition to their physical forms, they also sacrificed their planets and allowed an external force to take them. Consume our blood, worship at our altars, curve the melody, is a simple demand to harvest SAM, utilize Mercer Spheres, and develop the proper methods of communication. Flat frequencies paint straight lines. The blood is a teacher. Each altar is a window. This is a further, clearer explanation that basic, shallow communications aren't going to cut it, but using SAM will teach the way, along with a reminder that Mercer Spheres are a glimpse of the potential power of higher existence. So, did that make any sense? Well, either way, let me dive deeper into my logic of translating some of these terms and more. A pretty common word you'll hear while the alien and Ada are talking and figuring each other out is effigy. This seems to refer to you, the Pioneer, specifically, but broadly it likely refers to a physical form or body. If the aliens truly have ascended beyond the physical world, it makes sense for them to refer to a body as a vessel for consciousness rather than an intrinsic part of being a person. Speaking of bodies, you'll hear a lot of words related to organic bodies, bones, limbs, and possibly the word metal are all used to refer to your factory machines. It's unclear what the broader meaning might be, though perhaps it is generally technology, civilization, progress, or even something related to consumption. Notably, these words strictly refer to things in the physical world that are overtaking. When talking about the higher dimension, the aliens stay away from body imagery and instead use imagery related to sewing and music. They often bring up the tapestry, which seems to be a word that generally means the plane of higher existence and purpose that they have attained. It could also be a higher level of understanding. The tapestry is made up of threads, which are connections or aspects of understanding. To sew the threads is to bring them together into one whole creation, and to weave is to create and build. The aliens call your factory the Mimic Tapestry, and when you unlock the alien power matrix, they say, you row shrines and engrave silent organs incompatible with the tapestry, implying that these factory buildings do not bring you closer to a higher existence, you only abuse it to reach the goals of mere mortals. In addition to weaving terms, we also hear a lot of terms related to water. If the tapestry is how they view their higher knowledge, bodies of water are how they visualize the planes of existence. The basic terms are shallow and deep, referring to the third dimension and the fourth dimension respectively, or more simply, basic versus complex. Current refers to consciousness, while waves and flow refer to thoughts, though it's possible that these terms are all synonyms that generally refer to brain activity. This is clear in the exchange between the alien and Ada, where they say, "The effigies make a flow? You are not the current?" In this question, they are still trying to understand that the pioneer is the body, and Ada is the consciousness inhabiting it, in a sense. So they access the pioneer's brain, but because Ada is inside of it, she is able to detect that the pioneer's brain is processing human speech, and is able to eventually tap into the communication. Another interesting water-based term is shore. The shore is the middle ground between the dimensions, but another term that seems to have a similar meaning is window. Windows are like portals between the dimensions, and quite literally refer to the artifacts like the Mercer Sphere. This is most obvious when upgrading the Dimensional Depot, and the alien says, "The window is beautiful, have you tried making it a door?" referring to the portals that the Pioneer will eventually construct. The last big category is musical terms. Sing means to communicate, compose is to initiate communication, discordant means bad while harmony is good. Resonance and rhythm are both positive terms that generally seem to refer to understanding, though it's somewhat unclear exactly what they mean. Crescendo is used as a celebratory exclamation, which makes total sense. One term I find very interesting is symphony and first symphony. Symphony at times seems interchangeable with song, meaning a communication, though perhaps a more intentional communication that carries a higher level of complexity. It goes from a simple note to a harmonious collection of notes assembled with purpose. This would seem to imply that the term first symphony is first intelligent communication, but it seems to be more specifically creation story, which I find fascinating. When the alien tells Ada they wish to hear her first symphony, she explains how she was created by humans and given the purpose of preserving them. When Ada asks for their first symphony, the aliens give a poetic answer that seems to speak of their former third-dimensional existence and their path to a higher plane. Later, the aliens ask for the first symphony of the blood, which seems to refer to the creation story of humans. And Ada explains the process of evolution on Earth and how that led to the humans that we have today. That either means that first symphony is a very loose poetic term with multiple meanings, or that when words are modified in this way in the alien language they gain new meaning, because they don't quite seem to match. When researching the alien power augmenter, the alien voice says, "Do not loop the loop organ. It will shred and tear and unravel the threads. Many temples burned." Loop organs are definitely Somersloops, referencing the Mobius strip shape and using the word organ, which is used elsewhere to refer to your factories and the artifacts. This implies that the power of the Somersloop may be what caused the disaster on Massage that resulted in deposits of dead aliens and remnants of organic-looking masses. Maybe. Notably, the Somersloop is an integral part of the alien system. If you flush a Somersloop down the toilet of the hub, one of the possible responses is from the alien, and it says,
"A thread of scripture weaves itself back into the tapestry, harmonious."
This sentence is both dense with terminology and pretty easy to translate. It essentially says, an aspect of understanding returns to its higher existence, and it is good. We can cross-reference this with another possible voice line, which is,
"The void donut calls each note back into its song, only to be composed anew,"
which seems to refer to the laws of conservation, noting that the universe calls everything to its eventual destruction, but nothing is truly destroyed forever, it's only remade into something else. So the base components of the Somersloop are returned to the universe, and the aliens who love entropy and the natural forces of ruin and decay see this as a good thing. At one point, Ada asks the alien voice what the shape of the universe is, and it gives a confounding answer, but one interesting thing it mentions is string, which likely refers to string theory. And this kind of ties everything together, at least for me. The entire language of the aliens is based on their understanding of the universe, and if string theory is accurate, this language makes sense. In string theory, rather than point-like particles, particles are instead strings that vibrate, and they can potentially provide a path to higher dimensions. String theory isn't super important to the lore of Satisfactory, but it does make the specific language around resonance and threads a lot more clear. You can kind of see where their language is coming from. It also helps make sense of the difference between shallow, point-based understanding and deep, string-based understanding. We also get some more evidence that the Pioneer is a clone, which I discussed in detail in my last video. First is the obvious word choice of Effigy. This could just be the alien's translation for body, but it could also be in reference to our actual definition of the word, which is a model of a person, but not a real person. In Strange Communication number 14, the alien voice says, "The effigy is not an effigy." The effigy is the Pioneer, but the alien voice realizes that what they have been calling an effigy might not actually be one. In other words, they think it's a human, but it's not. Ada clears it up by saying that they are an effigy, just not of Ada. However, the Pioneer is definitely flat, or simple, which may sound insulting, but just means you're part of the normal world. Some of the things the alien voice says lead to some interesting conclusions about Sam. It is referred to as their blood, but also that it eats, builds, and teaches. They even agree with Ada when she calls it a fungus. Some of these words feel less than positive to me, but it seems clear that Sam was the key to the aliens' higher existence and how they transcended from shallow beings to deep beings.
We understand your signal stops and your voice floors.
But there was a price to be paid for letting it in, depending on how you see it. They gave up their temples, their planets, and allowed Sam to literally consume their bodies.
Consume.
Ada asks if it was just about survival, essentially eternal life as a higher being, or if there was something more, but they mysteriously choose not to answer. They see the factories as an effective mimicking of their tapestry, their purpose. They say it swallows temples, that it's harmonious. This implies that the alien's purpose is to consume, to extract, or to destroy, or that the pattern they refer to is like entropy, and the consumption and destruction and overtaking is good simply because these are natural forces that must happen. And if they really do work like a fungus, then of course they would see things that way. A fungus wants to spread. So it's debatable whether the aliens have truly reached a higher level of understanding, or if they're just a hive mind that has been overtaken by something that seeks only to expand. It really gives a deeper meaning to "the factory must grow." All threads will become a part of the tapestry in the deep. This explains why Ada and the alien entity get along so well. As I mentioned in the theory about FICSIT's true goals, Ada is systematically consuming as many planets as possible for an unknown reason. The aliens make the realization that the vessel is like blood, that while Sam and the aliens are symbiotic, so too are the Pioneer and Ada. The Pioneers are the hands that weave, while Ada is the thoughts. As Ada says, both are necessary to create, and create she shall. So what do you think of these theories? Do some of them seem reasonable, or am I reading way too deeply into this silly factory game? I am fascinated by the hidden lore in Satisfactory, even though it doesn't really affect the gameplay, and I refuse to believe the cryptic alien messages are just random gibberish that sounds cool. I think every word has deep meaning and intent, and trying to figure out the meaning has been a wild ride. But I know I'm far from the most intelligent person in this community, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, and if you've come up with any of your own theories around the alien life forms who demand that you consume and harvest everything in your path. I'd also appreciate if you liked and subscribed if you appreciate the effort I put into this video, and I will see you in the next one.